Welcome everybody to our Organic Commercial Fruit Production Strategies for the Midwest webinar series. My name is Amaya Tucha and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Plant and Agroecosystem Sciences at UW-Madison, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Today's webinar is on engaging fresh produce consumers with the value proposition with Dr. Alicia Rihn. Thank you, Alicia, very much for presenting today to our audience. I'm gonna talk a little bit and give a little bit of a background on Alicia Rihn. She joined the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in July of 2020. She is a Minnesota native with a background in specialty crop marketing and research. Her research and extension programs focus on consumer behavior, willingness to pay, and perceptions of specialty crops and niche products. She is interested in addressing how people perceive products, interact with them, and the best marketing strategies to add value for consumers and businesses alike. She uses eye tracking technology and applied economics to generate actionable insight based on these topics of interest. Her current research topics include plant benefit information, native plant perception, alternative pest control methods, e-commerce, and point of sale information. Alicia, thank you so much for giving this webinar, and I'm just going to let you take it. But before that, I just want to remind the audience, please stay muted and with your camera off. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we will have some time after Alicia's presentations to go through those questions and answer those questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's see. There we go. One second. Hide all this stuff. All right, cool. Well, thank you for that introduction. Thank you all for being here. And I'm really excited to be here talking to you a little bit about the value proposition with looking at fresh produce. To be honest, it's been several years since I've looked at organic fruits and vegetables. However, I went back and started looking back at the literature and what's been done since that point in time. And I have to tell you that the organic movement in general has a really good, strong value proposition that's been consistent over time, which is great in my opinion from your perspective, because it means people are getting educated. They're hearing the same messages, and that really makes it much easier in the context of communicating with that customer, educating them and generating value for everyone all around. In terms of what I'm going to be talking about today, this is just general overview, and I'm taking the pie in the sky view today simply because I usually talk to growers that are just starting or exploring different markets here in Tennessee, and really having that base knowledge in place really helps us moving forward as we brainstorm different opportunities for our own operations, because we are all a little bit different. What works for one person may not work for the rest. And so depending on where you are and what you're interested in, I'm hoping you take nuggets of information and implement them in your own businesses. So I always start with a market overview, simply because that puts us all on the same playing field. Then I'm going to talk about the value proposition and branding, go into market channels a little bit, which is more your retailers. My area, again, is that direct to consumer marketing. So those are the channels I'm going to be focusing on, primarily farmers markets. And then I want to wrap up with pricing strategies. Again, what I'm seeing amongst our growers is that they say they need help with this. So just kind of talking through it a little bit, giving you some ideas to think about, all with the idea of generating value for you by offering that customer this essentially a list of benefits they would receive from purchasing your products or services. So let's get into it and start with looking at that organic market overview. Again, you all are probably a little more aware of this than I am, but it really is cool to see where in the United States we're seeing those organic farms. And in the Midwest, you're in a really good location. We see a fair number of them there, as well as the Northeast, and of course the West Coast with California and Oregon and Washington. But that's good because essentially what you can do is leverage the presence of the organic movement and essentially get the word out and get more products moved than you could if there were less organic farms. Here in Tennessee, we don't have as many organic producers. It's warmer and it's humid. We get disease pressure and pest pressure from the north and south and a lot of fungal issues that really makes it a challenge. We still have some good organic products, but not nearly as much as they are able to have in other locations. Okay. Yep. Okay. There we go. Took a second. All right, so this is from the USDA ERS, and what it's showing is farm acreage. We are having issues with urban encroachment and losing farm acreage. So I was really excited to see this because the red line shows total US certified organic farmland, and you can see we have that upward trend over the last 23 years or so. The blue bar are our US certified organic cropland, and then the green are the organic pasture and rangelands. And so what you can see really is that the organic cropland is what's driving that increase. It's plateauing a little bit here in the last couple years, but generally it is going upwards, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues in the next 5 or 10 years. In terms of what is selling, this is looking at the different food sales since 2021 through about 2019. And everything's expanded. All of the different food sectors that we're seeing here have really expanded. However, you can see that the driving force here up on top is our fruits and vegetables that's really been taking the lion's share of the market share that we have in this industry. And in my mind, that's very beneficial for our farmers because a lot of us do grow fruits and vegetables. In terms of where they are selling those products, this is from 1998 to 2021. And what's interesting here is you can see in red, that's our farmers markets, our CSAs, the mail order and other direct to consumer. That's actually stayed fairly consistent across this duration of time, meaning there's a lot of stability there. However, those natural and health food stores are decreasing a little bit. They're giving up some of their market share to the traditional grocery stores, club stores, and supermarkets, which is in blue. And the other one that's coming into the field here is internet sales, right? In particular, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of customers going online and trying to order directly from the grower and have that delivered to their homes. And so we're seeing a little bit of a change in the marketplace. I mean, there's the convenience factor of those traditional stores, right? Everyone's familiar with farmers markets and some of the benefits those provide. But then we're also seeing a fair amount of success for those online retailers. And we'll come back to this part here a little bit further in the presentation and dive into a couple of those a little more. So this graphic is from the MMR, and this is just showing global organic food market. And taking this apart, what you can see in the top left corner, this is the market size in US $1 billion. And they took 2022 data and are forecasting it through 2029, looking at the compound annual growth rate. And essentially they're at 13.2%, which that is very high for a CAGR. And that's good because it says that they think there is unmet demand and potential moving forward for these organic food products. And then in the bottom, this is just looking at the different regions across the globe. And you'll notice that North America is over 50% of the market share, followed by Europe. Again, in my mind, from the perspective, if you think back to where the farms are, the farmland's increasing, and looking at these stats, again, that's showing a healthy market that they're anticipating it will continue to grow. In terms of the product segment overview and where they think their growth is going to occur, you'll see that the fruits in blue, the vegetables in orange, and the beverages in gray, all of them are increasing a little bit, but the lion's share of the growth is occurring in the organic food or fruits segment. So again, good news for those of you who are growing organic fruits, and the vegetable ones growing fairly well as well. this study was from 2011. It's a little bit old. However, I wanted to bring it up because these are the greatest external challenges facing the marketing of natural and organic products. And this has been fairly consistent over the years. And the number one thing that about 50% of the market said was price sensitivity. And that's true. If the economy goes down, people tend to be a little less hesitant to buy these products, right? Because they're a little more price sensitive. Second one was some confusion between organic and natural. Counter to this, though, we're seeing both of those markets grow. So even though there's some confusion, people are still valuing these and paying premiums to obtain these products. Third one is low awareness of the impact of conventional products. And then the fourth is confusion around that value proposition. So I highlight these four simply because in my mind, they really do tie into the value proposition, because the stronger your value proposition, the better you outline the benefits people will receive from your products and services, the less price sensitive they are, because they see the value, they recognize it, they are willing to spend the money where they say their values are, okay? It also helps decrease any of this confusion and generate awareness of why they should be buying these products. So that's why I included this slide, because this is somewhat consistent. I think the percentages have probably gone down over time. However, they are things to be aware of where you could offer some educational opportunities through your marketing efforts. So that brings me to the value proposition. Now, every single one of you has a value proposition, whether you have written it out, whether you have it in your mind. It's that concept of what clearly identifies the benefits of your company's products and services that the customer will receive from buying those from you. So this differentiates you from conventional. This differentiates you from the substitute products or the competition. This is what's driving them back to your farm, that loyalty, and generates value beyond just the cost of production, okay? So it adds value by talking about the benefits. It could be the attributes of the product. It could be your farm story, who you are, the higher quality products that you provide. All of this builds into that value proposition and helps justify higher price points that people respond to in different ways. So talking about this value proposition, if we start by looking at this graphic on the left, the orange circle there is talking about a solution to a customer's problem or need. They want fresh, high quality food. They want stuff that doesn't negatively impact the environment, that it provides good soil health, that improves biodiversity, that is maybe less dependent on certain things they don't like chemicals, right? So that's the solution to the customer's problem. The blue is the advantage over the competition. So what are you providing that they can't necessarily get elsewhere? And then the green is the benefit that that customer expects. So those three components all come together to that value proposition and things that you can kind of tick off the list of when thinking about what to communicate with those customers. And the great thing is that we're seeing a shift right now that we're going towards younger people. So millennials, for example, have $2.5 trillion in spending power. They're a giant generation, and they are spending responsibly. So they are spending money on environmental stewardship, on things that benefit the earth, that are more sustainable than even Gen X, the generation immediately before them. They're also coming into their own. So they're having families, they're first-time home buyers. Many of them associate with being foodies. So this segment of the population really is coming into their own, and they really are spending money on things they value. So sustainability, environmental initiatives, giving back or keeping things within the community, anything local. Local has been a huge push for millennials, Gen Z, and some Gen Xers as well over the years. And so anything you can say that connects back to that would really resonate with this group. So really what I want you to think about is, how do your values align with your customers' values? And then how do we communicate that with them in order to generate engagement? Because the more you align with their needs and wants, the more product that gets out there, the more demand there is. So here's my example. This most of you recognize this, right? It's a tomato plant. I bought this several years ago just to take this picture. And many of you can probably tell me more about that plant than I know. But when you think about your end consumer, they're coming in, they're looking at it, and I would hope many of them can recognize it as a tomato plant, but many of them, maybe they can't, but they see some flowers. That's a good sign. It's alive. It's going to produce fruit. Okay. Now, but if you don't provide any more context, that's all they have for information as they're thinking about whether or not they're going to buy this. So since I bought this product, I made a bullet point list of actually what it is. So this is a cherry tomato. It's an heirloom variety. It was organically produced. The container is recycled. It's locally grown, and it actually was a branded plant. So each of these attributes is a way to, again, connect with people and generate value. Because, okay, if I'm expecting a beefsteak and I get a cherry tomato, that's not great, right? But that's kind of an obvious one that you would list. But heirloom is such a hot topic right now. People view it as more higher quality, as more intense flavor, kind of that throwback to tradition. They like the colors. Organic, of course, they've got a lot of quality perceptions related to organic beyond even just the environment. They view it as tastier, higher nutrient content, things like that. And then over the years, it's been very interesting. I do a lot of work with specialty crops, and being recyclable is extremely important. And as many of you may know, a lot of our containers are not recyclable by a lot of different firms. So having an option to collect those back and either take them to somewhere that can take them, or figure out a way to reuse them, or maybe have biodegradable containers is a big thing. So anyway, moral of the story here, though, is that the value proposition and communicating that, as well as the different components of your products and services, is extremely important, because we do really good things. We grow great product, but if we don't tell the story and tell the information behind it, we're essentially leaving money on the table, because people don't necessarily know that without gaining that information. Okay, so here's an example. I just pulled this from the Organic Trade Association, where, let me blow up the top part and then the lower part. Many of you may have seen this already, but it essentially provides kind of that value proposition for organic products in general, right? So the top part is no artificial colors or flavors, no artificial preservatives or irradiated ingredients, no GMO. Okay, that's great. On the right is more about animal husbandry, so clean, cage-free living, access to roam outdoors, organic feed. So depending on your products, these are things you can focus on. And again, this is providing that overview of organic products to help encourage people to make wise choices for their needs. The bottom half here focuses more on health. So exposure to pesticides, nutrient-rich whole food ingredients, less greenhouse gas emissions, talking about the omega-3 fats in organic milk. And then the bottom right is increasing biodiversity, which, coming from the ornamental plant world, I will tell you, anything related to being pollinator friendly has been consistently one of the highest valued attributes we have seen for the last 10 to 15 years, ever since the neonicotinoid discussion started. And in general, people really love pollinators, really want to help them. And when you think about growing fruits and vegetables organically, there is a lot going on there that helps pollinators, and we need them to set fruit, right? So that would be an interesting thing to include when talking to your customers about some of the benefits related to your products. So in general, what we see, though, from this particular flyer is that the key benefits they're trying to communicate are personal health, environmental health, land stewardship, and that one's becoming more and more important to people as agricultural land is decreasing, as well as soil health is becoming more important to folks. So that's one to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And then the ethical treatment of animals. These are key things that they are promoting in general that you could piggyback on and also promote if it aligns with your business. So one of the best things you can do, and I am sure you have done it already, is build your brand. And just, again, starting at the base level, a brand is your name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that distinguishes your goods from others. So the USDA organic logo, right? That is their brand. It's highly recognizable. It's been out there for many, many years. People know that that indicates a product that is organic. But you can piggyback on this because you're certified organic, but you also have your brand for your business. And this is important because it's a point of differentiation. It can be simple or complex, a logo or image. It can be a set color or multiple colors. I will tell you, so from our eye tracking research, that logos do attract attention, visual attention, faster than text, that people look at a little bit longer, and it generally tends to create more value than just text. So if you can think of a picture that would resonate with people, a logo, that may help you out a lot. Some of the key things to include here, of course, is your company name, right? That's your brand. And then anything that helps build that value proposition and aligns with your values, your customers' values, and it needs to communicate that. So one thing related to this that I think is a step people sometimes miss is asking for feedback. And a big thing with that is either talking to people who are not familiar with your brand, those who are familiar, or just trying to look at your brand with a clean or without being aware of your experience with it. So think about it. Okay, if this is the first time I see this, does it capture my attention? What do I think it communicates? What does it reflect in terms of my company values? How is it communicating that value proposition? And should I improve it? Should I not? You know, just kind of think about things along those lines because you really do want to have that clear communication with your customer. Now, there's an interesting line of research related to this human brand element. And essentially, what that does is it gives people a relatable identity. And in our industry, this is a huge thing, right? It's either the farm name, a person, it's your family history, it's the story, right? So on the right, this was at one of our farmers markets, and it's Three Sisters pies. You can see the picture here of the mulled peach, the Three Sisters. They put the logo towards the bottom of the mason jar so you can see the product. And if you think about this, though, how relatable is that, right? Grandma had a pantry where she had canned peaches, green beans, what have you, in mason jars. So you got a good visual of the product. But a lot of us also have seen the black and white pictures, right? Whether it was in a relative's attic or going through pictures in the not too distant past, things like that. So it all resonates, but it also takes you back to that farm kitchen where you had, for example, the peaches or what have you. And it's got a distinct flavor. And I will tell you, flavor and scent are the two closest what is that? Associations in the brain to memory, right? So there is a way of building that connection for the customer. But the big thing here is it really needs to kind of make those connections. And that's one of the benefits, as well as differentiating that product from the competition. So local's important, uniqueness. And one thing about the local element to be aware of is that a big part of that is the helping the local economy. So I included this is out of Oregon State, and it's from 2016, but the percentages stay pretty similar. For every dollar spent on local products, about 76% of it stays in the local economy, whereas imported foods only 28%. So when you talk about people wanting to benefit local, that's another component of that story that can help connect the dots for the customer. One thing I did want to touch on, there's been several studies about aesthetics related to fresh fruits and vegetables. And what's fascinating to me is when you think about going to your grocery store, consistency is king, right? You need consistent appearance, size, grading. All of those things are very important. So you're not going to see a lot of imperfections. However, when you're selling directly to the consumer, and in particular, if you are an organic producer, there is a lot more tolerance for some of this imperfections. I mean, I have a picture of ugly tomatoes. Those have become kind of a hot thing too, right, in the conventional grocery stores. However, the flavor's a lot better if they buy direct from the grower, right? Anyway, so there's greater tolerance if it's organic, if it's only a color-related aesthetic blemish. There's a need to educate people about what is causing it, that it's purely aesthetic, that it doesn't impact the plant health or the flavor or the quality. They're still going to get a decent product. It's just it looks a little bit different. When it comes to, depending on your market channel, there might be a need for a discount. However, when you're selling direct to consumer, there may not be. But a key thing, and I bolded this statement at the bottom, is that you really need to be aware of who tends to buy your products because, for instance, older consumers are a lot less forgiving on appearances of these fresh produce. So if you primarily sell to an older group, you may want to be more aware of this and maybe heighten the educational components. However, millennials, Gen Z, they understand, nature happens. So that's kind of an interesting twist on this. So back to the brand though, one of the key things why we're building that brand is that it builds brand equity. And what that means essentially is that people become loyal. They expect a certain standard. When they buy tomatoes from you, they expect it to be the best tomato they have ever had, and they expect it to be that way consistently, right? And that's great. Loyal customers are great because it costs less to retain people and keep them happy than to go and attract new customers. So you spend less money on promotions, retention, and engagement when you have loyalty. But so we've done several studies on loyalty. And what's fascinating here is you think about loyalty and people are satisfied with products. That doesn't drive loyalty. Rather, you have to go a step beyond and actually delight people. So delight is what's driving loyalty rather than satisfaction. You think about I say think about a loaf of bread. You might be satisfied with it, but are you going to really stay to that brand of bread? Not necessarily unless it's the best thing you have ever had, right? So that's kind of the idea of providing that one step extra. It can be through customer service. It can be through taste tests where people get to experience the good prior to purchase. Any of these elements can help heighten the engagement that the customer has and improve their level of delight. So like I said, some of these things can drive that exceptional products. Check, we've got that. A brand that really resonates and engages them, that they want to stand behind and they'll tell all their friends about and they'll brag about it on social media. Perfect. And then customer service, just being kind to people, answering their questions, talking about, here's the farm, this is what we do. Yeah, come on out, do a tour, whatever it is that you're comfortable, right? And so this all helps differentiate you from those mass retailers and tell the story and why your products are better. Essentially, the value proposition, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about retail channels. So we showed this already earlier, talking about how the direct-to-consumer routes in red are fairly consistent. Those natural and health food stores are the second leading market share, but they're constricting a little bit, losing market share to the traditional channels as well as online channels. In particular, the pandemic heightened online opportunities, and we saw a fair number, particularly millennials and Gen Z, buying products online, including fresh produce and plants. And we've done work on that actually in the ornamental plant industry. And what we found was people were very satisfied. Like 95% of our samples said, we will be buying those online again, simply because the industry stepped up and was able to provide a high quality product through this convenient channel, right? And if a lot of millennials and Gen Z have, well, maybe not Gen Z, they're a little young yet, but have children. So anything that improves convenience and ease of access is a good thing. Another thing that I thought was interesting, if you have not done so, Google Trends, if you search Google, this service will pop up, or this tool. And what you can do is track how people search common terms over time on Google. So this is U.S. organic online searches in the food and beverage category from 2004 to 2024. And this is interest over time. And what you can see is generally there's been an upward trend. You can see, okay, about where the recession was, it dipped a little bit. We have some seasonality, but then it starts creeping up again through the pandemic. Slight pause as we hit the inflation times when people were a little concerned about the economy, right? But then it started picking up again as people have become a little more confident in the economy. Generally, we are seeing that upward trend, and that's what we want to see. But people are looking online. And what was interesting is when you look at the top inquiries, the number one that they were doing is organic grocery store near me. Where can I get this product? Where is it located? Second one was organic ingredients. And the third was baby food, milk, and oatmeal. So other potential value-added opportunities, right? So moral of the story, though, is that we've got a younger generation that's very tech savvy. And as a result, it's important to be where they are. And part of that is having an online presence. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to sell products online because that's a whole different supply chain, right? And trying to meet needs, potentially increase labor, and may or may not have availability for scaling up. But it is important to have a website. And on that, it's good because you can build your brand awareness and build brand equity. So including the brand names, what products you grow and sell, and where can they find your products? Because if you're not online, so we all have smartphones, right? It's super easy to look at this stuff and find where this product is. And okay, now I'll drive there. But if it's not available online, people may be completely unaware of it. So it's important to have that readily available. It's also a good way to engage people. So it's a platform for reviews or word of mouth. And the cautionary tale here is that this actually does need to be monitored. So if you have positive reviews, all's fine and dandy. But if someone, I don't know, maybe they found a bug on something, right? And if people aren't as aware of the potential for bugs to happen, that could come across as a negative. So you need someone to monitor it to at least respond in a timely manner to potentially negative comments. And that's okay because it's an opportunity to educate, it's an opportunity to correct actions. The other thing is to kind of keep it simple. People have a very limited attention span, especially online. And so keeping it as concise and simple, but professional, visual. We have very visual products. It's important to have high quality pictures. Given the quality of photos we can take on our phones now, it's important to update those. You may be selling the same apples that you sold 20 years ago, but the picture quality matters because if you watch some of the early Pixar shows, you sit there and look at the pixelation and you're like, ooh, that looks old. It's not that old, but it looks old. So you kind of have to update things a little bit. Online presence is also very important in order to connect to the location or being local because people really do like supporting their local growers. There was a study done in 2023 looking at how the pandemic impacted this, in particular for organic sales. And what they found was that there was a positive correlation between the farmers' IT literacy, meaning that they're more tech savvy, right? As well as their customers' interest in buying organic, and then the amount of products that were sold through online channels. So it all kind of builds together. And what it tells me is if maybe you're not the most comfortable person using online technologies, and that's fine, but see if you can find someone in your family or someone that you can barter with, maybe give them some fresh produce so that they can maintain your online presence, something so that you are present there for people to know about your products and that they're available. Because essentially the big thing here is that a lot of our customers are now online, and in order to leverage your value proposition and be competitive in the market, you need to be where they are. Okay, so I have done a fair amount of work in farmers markets, particularly in Tennessee. We've seen a lot of demand in those areas. So I do want to dedicate a portion of this talk to talking about farmers markets. And a lot of you are going to be like, yeah, I know this already, but it's a good refresher. And again, taking those snippets of information to brainstorm on for your own farms is important. So why do people shop at farmers markets? And the big thing from my perspective, is to understand this behavior, because that can improve the effectiveness of our marketing and strategies in order to resonate with more people and bring them in. And it's important to know the characteristics of your buyers in order to identify, is there something that they want that I don't know about? Can I tap into other markets that may have greater profit potential? And then developing stronger and more strategic marketing plans and business plans moving forward. It's a way to be proactive, essentially, and build business rather than being reactive. So there are lots of studies out there on farmers markets, and these are kind of the top reasons why customers go to farmers markets for their fresh produce. Number one is quality and freshness. Across the board, if you're selling a fresh produce item or value-added agricultural item, quality and freshness is going to be king. Taste of the product ties right into that, right? It's interesting because there is the need for unique or exotic produce. So we have a lot of foodies out there. We have people who are willing to experiment with things. And so some people are driven to farmers markets in order to try things they can't get in that commercial grocery store. There's the social atmosphere. People use this as an outing and opportunity to go get an ice cream and wander the shops. There's direct contact with the farmers. They like to know where their food is coming from. They're supporting the local farmers and helping with rural livelihoods and farmland. There's also this pro-environmental attitude because those products are coming from closer, right? Usually you're not hauling in a product from California to sell at your farmer's market. So there's a decreased carbon footprint and increased sustainability with the idea of buying those products from local sources. But what's interesting is there are some distinct characteristics of people buying from farmers markets. And this was a 2021 study, so it's fairly recent. And what they found was that people who buy from farmers markets have about a 6.5% increase in their fruits and vegetable consumption. They are 9.4% have an increase in home meal preparation. So they want to cook at home, and they're incorporating more fruits and vegetables into those items that they are cooking at home. They're eating fewer meals away from home, and they have increased access to and consumption of healthy foods. There are some, so when you think about this, though, some things to think about is what can you do to help them with these home meals? So recipe ideas, how to prepare produce, especially if it's something they're not familiar with. Providing samples it's kind of fun because we do some research at farmers markets, and you'll see someone put out the sample tray, right? Someone will grab a bite, they'll keep walking, they'll get maybe 10, 15 feet beyond that stall, and then the taste kicks in, right? And they stop, think about it, turn around and go back. And so it's like there's a delayed response when they notice what they're actually doing, right? But I've seen it be very successful, particularly if it's maybe a hot item that's ripe right then. So, you get that real fresh from the farm flavor rather than something that's been sitting in storage or transported a ways, or something that's unique. I've seen heirloom tomatoes be pretty effective too amongst folks that like fresh tomatoes. We do notice some demographic differences for those folks at farmers markets. Generally, they tend to have a slightly higher education. Women still dominate. They are still the primary household grocery shopper. However, the proportion of men that are shopping for groceries is increasing, but women still are the dominant decision makers. They tend to shop in groups, which this is different than grocery stores. So 2 to 3 people, again, that social outing element, right? They spend about 26% of their weekly food budgets at farmers market, or about $30. And spending, one thing to be very aware of, and many of you are probably aware of this, is spending is directly linked to income. We have the term income effect, and essentially that means that the higher your income, the less likely you will notice prices, or the less likely you will be set back by seeing a higher price. Conversely, if people have lower incomes, they do tend to be more price sensitive. So thoughts related to this, though, is there is a need, as you set up, to accommodate larger groups of people. If you only have room for one person to stand, that's going to be a deterrent because you only have one person looking at things at a time versus having several. It's important to space those stalls accordingly and potentially consider larger booths and tables depending on what the space can accommodate. Other factors that drive farmers markets visits, social norms. So often we're seeing people that they think their friends, their family, their peers expect them to be supporting local movements and environmental, pro-environmental purchasing behavior. And that's totally okay. So it's interesting because there's kind of this ripple effect where the social norm helps drive people to these different retail channels. A negative attitudes towards industrialization. This one is going to continue to be big, especially as agricultural land decreases and gets converted to other land uses, right? And in Tennessee, we're particularly concerned about that because we have a lot of folks moving here. So that'll be something to keep in mind and talk about, just to encourage people to realize, okay, we are preserving farmland, the farm way of life. We have higher quality products, but we can't do that without having land available. And then we all know seasonality. So you all have this much worse than we do because your winters are quite a bit colder, but spring and fall are hot times. Summer, you still get a lot of it, but it's not as punctuated, I guess, as when you get closer to the winter months. So here again, point of sale information is very important, signage, QR codes, etc., to talk about the farm and brand and seasonal produce. One thing to keep in mind is that the quicker it is, the better it is. QR codes are good for the enthusiast to connect back to your website. However, most people at that point in time are living in the present, and so providing that information right there without needing more interpretation is important. Other factors, ease of movement between vendors. If people are crowded, they're going to veer away from it. No one wants to be squeezed in next to someone else. And people are traveling to attend markets. And so this is amplified for Saturdays. So anything that makes it more of a destination. Think of it like agritourism rather than just a market in general where they can buy products. And then things that they care about is really that interpersonal trust. So this is between the customer and the producer. They want to know where their foods are coming from. Positive interactions have a positive impact on this. And there's also a need for lots of communication. So if you have that natural born salesperson, go ahead and put them out there to talk about it. We have a farmer here in Tennessee that they're a little more reserved, but they have this person who is just out there and talking to people, chatty Cathy. Oh yeah, you have young kids, you should bring them to the farm and we'll give tours. And it's just fascinating. Here, try this. That person who's really extroverted and engaging can go a long ways. And then that last point there is satisfaction with previous visits. That has a positive impact on whether or not they're going to come back and be a repeat purchaser. So anything that you can do to amplify that would be a positive impact. So again, telling your story, signing up for e-newsletters, anything like electronic. I know it sounds like a lot, especially if you haven't done it, but it is a much easier way to reach your clients and to educate them than some of the more traditional media routes. Again, signage, talking about the brand and visiting. It's their weekend, it's their relaxing time. And so it's kind of, again, making it more about that story and adding that value. So I wanted to make a side note here, just talking about Gen Z and millennials because they are different than the older generations. They're coming into their own and they're willing to spend money on things that traditionally people weren't as enthusiastic about, okay? And so it's important to be aware of how they are different from our older consumers. One, they are internet and technology savvy. Most people have smartphones now. It's super easy for them to do impulse questions and find out information really simply. They are digital shoppers. They grew up with this. I had someone ask me about online security and whether people were concerned about that. And amongst these generations, it doesn't even cross their mind. When you think back to when the internet first became available, and digital identity theft. It's still a thing, but these groups are not as concerned given that banks now have safeguards in place and things. Third point here is they're an experience culture. So anything that you can do to make it an experience is going to be more engaging for them. A lot of them have young children, so anything educational and connecting, this is how our food's produced, this is why it's good, that is what would help engage this group. They value sustainability. We do a lot of sustainability initiatives. So the big thing, if you think back to that tomato picture, is just communicating that with them. And then the last part is they do recognize and value benefit information. So this is personal health, this is environmental, this is looking at that long-term sustainability. All of these different factors would be things that would be ways to engage this group. Okay, so I think this is my last slide on farmers markets, but there were some barriers to them purchasing at farmers market. The number one was congestion. So that's often outside your control as the farmer, right? It's more the market planner and thinking about the layout and the space that is available, but it's something to be aware of how can we decrease congestion at our booth to allow people to have more room to get in. Second one is difficulty or distance to carry items. Think about watermelons, right? Small ones, okay, those are easy enough, but the big ones, people will, or at least I know I will, strategically think through my visit and be like, I will come back for this on my way out. Now, the trick is, and I don't have a percentage, is making sure people do come back for it because sometimes that isn't possible. So thinking about things like that, and also inconvenience. So if the location's not convenient or it has limited hours or limited product offerings, you're not going to see the foot traffic that you would from a more prevalent farmers market. And then not accepting credit cards, because cash, it's one thing if someone is aware that they need to bring cash and there's an ATM readily available, but that's not always the case. So just kind of be aware of it and brainstorm ways of how that could potentially get addressed. Now, this is one of my favorite things that we've discovered through many years of study is price is rarely a factor impacting purchasing decisions. It does matter, but it's not the primary factor. It's other factors that people make the decision whether or not they're going to buy it, and then check the price real quick, buy it, move on. So I want to finish up just by talking about a few pricing strategies. I usually try to include these slides because we have a lot of new farmers in Tennessee that want to know, okay, I grow ornamental plants, how do I price this product? Or I'm new to cut flower production, how do I price these products? And so I think it's good information to have available to you to think about. Now, I include this slide. This is looking at conventional prices versus organic prices per pound. And as you can see, organic prices, as they should, generate a premium over those that are conventional. And this has been slowly increasing. So that's all good news. Again, I'm seeing a lot of healthy growth in terms of the economic indicators for the organic industry. So that's all good news for you all. And again, you're seeing those price premiums, which the research says that people are willing to pay. The data backs it up, and that helps offset any additional costs related to production, which is great. So pricing produce, the biggest tip I could give you all is reach out to your extension agents, whether it's your county agents, your state specialists, see what they have available to you, because a lot of them may have budget sheets that are specific to your state. Here in Tennessee, we have those, and I have those as an example going through the next couple slides, but they are a great resource in order to get that information and also have that two-way conversation as you have questions. But pricing in itself sounds relatively simple, right? How much should I charge? Well, you need to look at your costs and add your markup. Well, by itself, that sounds simple, but that can be a little bit cumbersome. Let's just put it that way. Because when you think about your costs, that really comes down to record keeping. And sometimes that is hard, especially as you think about labor. Because, oh, I'm out there in the field doing this other thing. Oh, I'm just going to pull a few weeds as I go along, right? So it's kind of, you're multitasking and wearing multiple hats, and that can be a challenge. So when you think about costs, there are two that we're interested in. The first is variable costs. Those are the ones that are changing by the amount of product grown. So it can be fertilizer, irrigation, those types of costs. Those fixed costs are those that stay the same across. It doesn't matter if you're growing one plant or 2,000. So this would be your land and machinery. On the right, this is a sunflower budget from Penn State, and I have their website there if you're interested. We've had a big boom in cut flower production here in Tennessee, which is why I just use the cut flowers as an example here. But across, what you can see here is the quantity you have, your prices you paid, and then it estimates your total costs. So the top portion is all your variable costs, lime, fertilizer, pesticides, blah, 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 blah. Bottom is your fixed costs, the machinery, equipment, land, etc. And then it spits out, okay, what are your total costs? Okay, and that gives you that cost that then you can add your markup to. At UTK, we also have several budgets available. Those include tomatoes, bell peppers, blackberries, and blueberries, and they're free for public use. Again, I would check with my local extension agents first, though, because if they have something that's more relevant to your area, that's what I would use. However, you can look around and see what else is available online throughout the country and elsewhere. So here in Tennessee, thoughts on pricing. Essentially, record keeping is vital. It's a tough habit to get into, but that's very important because you really do need to cover your costs, and labor is a cost. Second is to identify your end goal, and that's often the best way to do it and say, okay, in order for me and my family to live in the way we want to live, we have to make X amount in profits. If you use that as your starting point, you can work backwards and say, okay, to make that profit, I need to grow X amount of this product in a year and sell it at this price point. That gives you a base to start at or to work towards. Now, when you're thinking about the market, though, you have to be aware of your competition and what they're charging. Because if you overcharge, people are going to get scared away. But if you undercharge, you're leaving money on the table and you're bringing down the entire market. And that's not good. It's better to be comparable so that everyone benefits, okay? And the second thing is to be aware of the household income for your target market. If there is any demographic that is going to be driving their tolerance for pricing, it is the household income. So that's the number one thing to be looking at. And you can look up average household income per county in your state in order to find out that information. So here is my example from here in Tennessee. So the blue line, these are tomato prices in 2022 over the growing season at farmers markets in these two different counties. It's price per pound. Knox County is in blue, Hamblin is in orange, and you can see there's about $1 difference across. And you can tell when the tomatoes come in season because it's pretty stable. Then it kind of decreases. Knoxville increases. There's an inverse relationship there, but then it kind of levels out. But the big thing here is if you look at those county household income levels, Knoxville is at almost 66,000. Hamblin is at 48,000. So the folks in Hamblin are a little more price sensitive and they're not going to go up to the prices that Knox County residents are going to. And as a farmer, you need to think about, okay, would it be worth my time to go a little bit further out to these other farmers markets, or do I stay local, or do I use a different strategy in these different locations and try and do both? Okay. Here's the same information. This is only Knox County going from 2017 in orange, 2018 in dark blue, 2019 in green, 2022 in light blue. And you can see again, as the season progresses, they change a little bit across the years. We've seen the prices go up. Demand in Knox County is very high right now. But okay, so this is $0 through $5 in Knox County. Here it is in Hamblin. If I flip back and forth again, you can see about that dollar difference between the two, where the Hamblin prices have gone up as well across these years. However, it's still about $1 less than what we get over in Knox County. And that directly ties into our household income by counties. So being from Minnesota, it took me a while to figure out the new counties in Tennessee. And what you see here in the West, the green here is corresponding to our higher household incomes, down to red, which has the lowest household incomes. In the left, this is around the metro centers of Memphis and Jackson. So that's the west side of Tennessee. Central, Williamson is the dark green one in the middle. That is Nashville. Nashville's building, and around Nashville, the suburbs are building quite a bit as well. And then to the right in East Tennessee, you can see Knox County, Loudoun, and Blount. These have the highest incomes in those areas. Part of it is our university there is there. Oak Ridge National Lab is around there as well. So here are the two counties I was showing you. Knoxville, or Knox County, is in the light purple. Hamblin is in the orange, but you can see their close proximity, that if you had a grower that was right on a county line, it wouldn't take a lot for them to come to farmers markets in Knoxville if they felt that the price difference was worth it. Okay. So these are just things for you to consider as you're thinking about your own operations. And I'm going to wrap up with just a few key insights and thoughts. In general, what we're seeing in the market is that organic produce sales are increasing. We're seeing heightened demand, and that there's a lot of opportunity to highlight your points of differentiation and the potential value people would receive from buying your products and services. There's a lot of opportunity to engage folks too, because they are interested in these products. So there's really a need to, one, if you haven't identified your value proposition, it's worth thinking about a little bit and kind of jotting it down and seeing where you think your firm is, and then think on ways of communicating those benefits to your end customer. Big one there is building your brand and your brand equity, talking about the farm, talking about the farmer, what makes you different. Having an online presence really, in today's day and age, is extremely important. People do impulse questions on Google all the time as they're out and about, and that can influence where they're going, right? And also thinking about your pricing strategy in order to cover your costs, but have that markup where you're able to live the life that you're interested in. And in terms of trends that we are seeing here in Tennessee that may or may not be beneficial for y'all, we are seeing a lot of demands for value-added products. So the jams, the jellies, honeys are a huge one. Anything that is slightly different, people are very interested in. And I mean, they benefit growers too, provided you have the resources to make those. Maybe you had a bumper crop and had extra product that you can make something with, access to the commercial kitchen, as well as whatever regulatory stuff is in place, is things to consider, right? But it's one way of extending the season and potentially generating greater profits. If it doesn't generate profits or draw in more people, those are two benefits you receive from the business side, right? It's okay to fire products that don't work for you, right? And be aware of those. Maybe it takes too much labor to produce, so you're actually losing money on it, okay? Ethnic fresh produce is very interesting. I took this picture when I was at the farmer's market because I had no idea what a shuck bean was. If I understand it correctly, they're dried beans. This is an Appalachian product that gets thrown in like bacon fat or ham or some sort of broth that then they soak up and become reconstituted, and it becomes a dish. I didn't buy them, and I kind of regret it. I'll have to keep my eyes open for next time. But anyway, ethnic fresh produce are ones that are associated with the state or region. I think of Minnesota wild rice. I bring that for potlucks because people here have no idea unless they're from the north. So things like that. Dried goods are good, as well as other prepared goods. Again, second big bullet point here is the experience culture. Anything that you can give them an experience that will resonate with them, and they're going to make a point of trying to get a repeat experience, or, hey, that was a really good product. I've not had it that way before or prepared that way. I am going to take that to this potluck. I am going to take this to the company picnic. That's a great sales point as well. And then, of course, outstanding customer service and the experience. Customer satisfaction is good, but it's really delight that is resulting in loyalty and driving loyalty. And that's what we want, is for people to come back time and time again. All right, so that's what I have for you all today. Feel free to, I have time for questions now. I believe or maybe I don't, man. Or feel free to reach out with emails as
We
well.
are on past the hour, so we won't have any time for questions. But Alicia, if you can just put your email, and if people want to, oh, you have it there on the slide.
Yep.
So if people want to contact Dr. Alicia Rihn, just feel free and send her an email. I just want to thank you for a fantastic webinar, a ton of really good information. I put it on the chat there that the recording of this webinar, if you want to come back and review some of the great information that Alicia presented today, you can go and check our YouTube channel of Wisconsin Fruit. It's our YouTube channel, and all of our webinars are there. And you can just go and review them there. And again, thank you so much, Alicia, for all the wonderful information that you share with us today.
Awesome. Thank you all.